Welcome back to English Echo Daily, the podcast where real English meets real life. Today's topic is one that I think is going to feel uncomfortably familiar to a lot of people. We're talking about overthinking, that loop in your head that just won't stop, the same thought over and over, going nowhere.
And before we get into it, we want to hear from you right now. Go to the comments and answer this. Are you an overthinker? And if yes, what's the one situation where your brain just goes completely crazy with thoughts? Tell us below. We read everything.
Okay, so let me just start with something that I think is important to say out loud. Overthinking is not a sign that you're smart. I know a lot of people secretly believe that. Like, I overthink because I care deeply, because I see all the angles, because I'm thorough. And yes, thinking carefully about things is valuable, but overthinking is something different. Overthinking is thinking that has gone past the point of being useful. It's analysis that has become paralysis.
That distinction is so important. There's a version of careful thinking that leads somewhere. You consider the options, you weigh the risks, you make a decision. That's productive. But overthinking is when you've already considered everything. You already know what you should probably do, and you just keep going around the loop anyway. Thinking the same thoughts again, finding new reasons to worry, imagining new scenarios. And the decision never gets made, or the action never gets taken.
And the exhausting part is that it feels like doing something. It feels productive. Your brain is working really hard. There's a lot of activity. But at the end of 2 hours of overthinking, you're in exactly the same place you were at the start, except now you're also tired and anxious.
Right, and I think this is why overthinking is such a trap, because it mimics thinking. It looks like problem solving from the inside, but it's not moving toward a solution, it's moving in circles around the problem.
So why do we do it? Like, if overthinking doesn't help, if it just makes us anxious and stuck, why does the brain keep doing it?
I think there are a few reasons, and they're all connected. The first one is that overthinking is a way of avoiding the discomfort of uncertainty. When you don't know how something will turn out, that uncertainty feels threatening, and so the brain tries to think its way to certainty. If I just think about this enough, I'll find the answer. I'll figure out the guaranteed path. I'll know for sure.
But certainty about the future doesn't exist. You can never think your way to a guarantee. Life doesn't offer that. And so the mind keeps searching for something that isn't there, and that search becomes the loop.
Exactly. And the second reason is that overthinking, strange as it sounds, can feel like control. Like, if I'm thinking about all the things that could go wrong, I'm prepared. I'm not naive. I'm ready. And there's a kind of comfort in that, even though the thinking itself is creating more anxiety than the actual situation ever would.
It's like you're trying to solve a problem that hasn't happened yet, and maybe never will. You're spending real mental energy on a fictional crisis.
Which is one of the things that makes overthinking so strange when you look at it clearly. Most of what overthinkers worry about never happens. Studies on this consistently show that the vast majority of the things we spend mental energy dreading either never occur or turn out far less catastrophic than we imagined. The brain is a very dramatic storyteller.
A very dramatic storyteller, and it always writes the worst version of the story. Nobody overthinks their way to, and then everything worked out great and everyone was happy. It's always the version where something goes wrong, where people judge you, where you fail.
Because the brain is wired toward threat detection, not optimism. It's scanning for danger, not for opportunity. And in a modern context where most of our threats are social, what will people think? Will I succeed? Will I be rejected? That threat detection system runs constantly, on every decision, on every interaction, on every possible future.
And I want to name something specific here because I think it affects a lot of people who don't realize it's connected to overthinking. And that's the relationship between overthinking and self-worth. A lot of chronic overthinkers are, underneath all the mental noise, people who are deeply afraid of making the wrong choice. not because they fear the outcome itself, but because they fear what making a mistake would mean about them. If this goes badly, it means I'm not smart enough, not capable enough, not good enough.
So the overthinking isn't really about the decision. It's about protecting a fragile sense of self. And that's a very different problem than just thinking too much. That's someone who doesn't have a stable enough foundation of self-worth to tolerate the normal uncertainty of being alive.
And I think that's really compassionate to understand about yourself if you recognize it, because it means you're not broken, you're not weak, you're just someone who at some point learned that mistakes were dangerous, that being wrong was a reflection of your value as a person. And that lesson is running in the background every time a decision feels impossibly hard.
So what do you actually do about it? Because I think we've painted a pretty accurate picture of what overthinking is and where it comes from, but I don't want people to just finish this episode with more thoughts about their overthinking. That would be ironic.
The overthinkers are now overthinking about overthinking.
Exactly. So let's get practical. The first thing I'd say is notice the loop. Just that, without judgment. I'm doing the thing again. Because awareness is the first exit ramp. When you're inside the loop, you can't see it. It just feels like thinking, like reality. The moment you can step back and name it, this is overthinking. This is a loop. This is not solving anything. You create a small gap. And in that gap, you have a choice.
And this sounds simple, but it takes practice because the mind will resist being observed. It will say, no, this is important. This is different. I really need to think about this one. And sometimes that's true. But over time, you start to recognize the texture of overthinking. It has a particular quality, repetitive, anxious, going in circles, not landing anywhere new. You start to feel the difference between that and genuine, useful reflection.
The second thing is something I call the good enough decision. And this is genuinely hard for overthinkers because they're usually perfectionists. But here's the truth. Most decisions in life are not permanent. Most decisions are reversible. You can change your mind. You can try something, see how it goes, and adjust. And a decent decision made today is almost always better than a perfect decision made never.
And I'd add to that, research on decision making consistently shows that people who make faster decisions with less information are not less happy with their outcomes than people who agonized over every detail. In fact, overthinkers often end up less satisfied because they've invested so much mental energy in the choice that when reality doesn't match the fantasy they built in their head, the disappointment is worse.
Which is almost poetic in its unfairness. You suffer more before the decision and you're less happy after it. The suffering doesn't buy you better outcomes.
So, what does buy you better outcomes? Action and feedback. You make a move, you see what happens, you learn, and you adjust. That's a learning loop. Overthinking is a closed loop. No new information comes in, no progress goes out.
The third thing, and this is physical, not mental, which I think is important, is to interrupt the loop with your body. Because overthinking lives in the head. It's a head experience. And one of the fastest ways to get out of your head is to get into your body. Go for a walk, do 20 jumping jacks, wash your face with cold water, put on a song you love and move. It sounds almost too simple, but the neurological shift is real. You cannot maintain the same anxious thought spiral when your physical state changes.
Because your body and your brain are not separate systems. They're in constant conversation. The tight shoulders, the shallow breathing, the tensed jaw that come with overthinking, they're feeding the anxiety back into the mind. When you relax the body, you signal to the brain the threat is over. It's safe to come down now.
And related to that, breathe. Deliberately, slowly. Longer exhale than inhale. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It literally tells your brain to stop producing stress hormones. 3 slow breaths will not solve your problem, but they will make you less reactive to it. And less reactive means more able to actually think clearly, which is what overthinkers think they're doing, but often aren't.
Okay, I want to bring in one more angle on this because I think it's the deepest one, and it's about presence. about where your attention actually lives, because overthinking is almost always about the future or the past. You're either replaying something that happened, what I said, what they meant, what I should have done, or you're pre-living something that hasn't happened yet. And in both cases, you're not here, you're somewhere else.
In the present moment, whatever is actually happening right now, in this room, in this body, in this breath, the present moment almost never contains the catastrophe you're imagining. The catastrophe is always somewhere else, in the future that hasn't arrived, in the past that's already gone.
Which is why things like mindfulness and meditation have such strong evidence behind them for reducing overthinking. Not because they stop your thoughts, they don't, and that's not the goal, but because they train you to notice when your attention has wandered away from now and to gently bring it back, over and over, without judgment. And that practice of returning, of noticing, of being here is genuinely one of the most powerful things a human can develop.
And you don't need to sit in silence for an hour to get the benefits. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even just 1 minute of deliberately paying attention to what's here, what's real, what's now, that's a rep. And enough reps over enough time changes how your brain defaults. It starts choosing presence more naturally.
Because at the end of the day, that's really what overthinking is stealing from you. Not just your decisions, not just your energy, your presence, the actual experience of being alive in this moment, of being here for your own life.
And that, I think, is worth fighting for. Not with force, not with self-criticism, because overthinkers are usually already very hard on themselves, but with patience, with curiosity, with practice. You're not trying to become someone who never thinks deeply. You're just trying to become someone who knows when to stop. Someone who can sit with uncertainty without being destroyed by it. Someone who trusts themselves enough to move.
Trust yourself enough to move. I think that's maybe the whole thing right there.
Yeah, I think it is.
If this episode resonated, and I have a feeling it did for a lot of you, please hit that like button right now. It costs you nothing, and it helps this podcast reach more people who need it. We really appreciate it.
And subscribe to English Echo Daily if you haven't yet. New episodes every single day. Real conversations, real topics, real English. The kind of listening practice that actually moves your level.
And before we go, final question for the comments. After everything we talked about today, what's one thought you've been overthinking that you could just let go of right now? Write it down. Sometimes naming it is the first step to releasing it.
See you tomorrow.
Take care of yourselves. Bye.